Hi everyone, today we did get a sideways choppy day, basically unchanged on the session, testing those support areas, but let's take a quick look at all of the charts and see, is this structure going to hold and push to the trend, or is this the top with a clear resistance around this kind of 685 area? Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got Meta climbing 3% on a report that they are going to make pretty significant cuts in their Metaverse. This has been eating up a ton of their capital. They've been spending a ton of money on it. You can see as much as 30% of their budget for Metaverse is now likely to get cut, which means a big chunk of that spending can potentially go away. And the last time they made an announcement like this, Meta went on a massive run. But of course, this is the name of the company. They're trying to pivot in this direction. They're trying to be Meta. What does that mean for the Metaverse? How are they going to make this a thing? They're definitely still putting a lot of money into their product line with VR glasses, VR goggles, all of that stuff. But they are signaling a little bit of a pivot here. You can see they pivoted to Meta in 2021, Metaverse being the next frontier for Zuckerberg. But now there are big cuts as part of that 2026 budget, mostly focused on the virtual reality group based on the report here. And you can see those losses, $4.4 billion in losses, and they've spent over $70 billion on this section in terms of cumulative losses for the Meta project, right? So a huge amount of money. And now this is potentially getting cut, and that is good for the stock price. Moving over to fear and greed, we're up to a 39 from a 26. Absolutely massive move despite markets not really moving very much. Interesting to see that here. Momentum still neutral, strength continues to tick higher but still extreme. Fear, and then you can see breadth continues to improve a little bit here. We'll take a look at that later, of course, but it's back into regular fear, so that's improving. Put call ratio came back down to a pretty normal level. It's not all the way down into that kind of calm area, and honestly I'm surprised this is still in fear at this kind of 0.65 area. I would say it's probably not in fear, at least neutral in that area for me. Volatility, however, continues to tumble. That's neutral here as well. Safe haven demand spiking up over the last day, giving you that greed metric. That's probably why we saw such a jump on the overall metric. We're seeing bonds underperform, so this metric is going a little bit higher there. And then junk bond, kind of like we expected yesterday. We saw the spike up, spike down now, but still in regular fear. Moving over to that economic calendar here, you can see continuing jobless claims and initial jobless claims coming back down pretty significantly, much better than expected on both of those. Good metrics there. Atlanta Fed GDP came down just a smidgen, but still 3.8. 3.8 is a good number. And then for tomorrow, we get this PCE data. That could be interesting. If that spikes up, that's going to be terrible for markets. Markets want to see numbers that give the Fed potential to cut. That is what the markets want right now. And if this comes in hot, that could make the argument a little bit tougher. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see basically flat on the day, up just 50 cents. Tried to go higher on the wicks here and immediately gave all of that back. Right at the high from that 12 November candle here, you can see it right in here through wicks to this area towards those highs, and then pulled back. This is continuing to be a zone of resistance. Realistically, I should probably add a level here with just how much of a topping pattern we're seeing in this zone right around that 685. It's kind of tight to 680 there, but there's clearly a zone of resistance in here, and that is what we're seeing right now. The momentum didn't step to bearish. I thought maybe we would get that today. It did hesitate. When we were down here, this momentum on the daily chart was bearish when I was watching it mid-session. We didn't close there, but if we do get another hesitation candle, we could see this pulling back, and I think we'll pull back to this kind of zone in here around kind of 672 to 667 area, pull back into here, and then you could get a bigger continuation. Either way, though, in the short term, I think we're still going to see a little bit more pullback, or at the very least more pullback in time, depending on what kind of price action we get after the PCE data tomorrow. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we're still in the middle of this range, bouncing just off of that 21 EMA, off of that middle of the range of these ATR bands on the 4-hour chart. Still bullish conditions there, but looking at that hourly chart, don't forget we are in bearish conditions. We flipped to bearish yesterday, and we're still in bearish here today. Got into that trailing stop on the 8 o'clock candle, and then immediately sold off back into the middle of range. Really flat on the day. Threw some wicks to the lows, so there were still a little bit of buyers in there, but every time we rallied, everything was met with selling. Moving over to the NASDAQ, same kind of thesis here. Very flat top from yesterday. Threw a wick to my level, 624.90, right at the high from that 12 November candle. Tagged that level and immediately sold on volume back down to the 55 EMA. Tagged that 55 EMA again. Hit my lower level pretty well below that 55 on the hourly chart. I think we'll probably get below that tomorrow. This will catch up all the way into here, tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens. Do we get the breakdown after the consolidation of EMAs, that full pullback? If we get above 624.90, close above it, then we're in good shape and you're looking for more bullishness. But right now you have pretty clear overhead resistance. Momentum, same kind of thesis here on the NASDAQ. Step to bearish mid-session, didn't close bearish. I suspect we'll get a close bearish tomorrow. Moving over to the Tasty charts for the Qs, you can see that same kind of thesis on the hourly chart. Hit that trailing stop, immediately sold. It is bouncing just a little bit right now. That's interesting, but I suspect that we'll continue to see this zone as a zone of overhead resistance. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, you can see 8 EMA dipped below it. 21 EMA was support on the 4-hour chart. This is still bullish conditions here, but we have that overhead resistance. I think we'll probably see at least a little bit of a pullback after this rally, right? This has been a pretty strong rally here. I think we need to see that same kind of pullback that we talked about on the SPY charts, get a higher low potentially, and then get the continuation if it's going to continue. Either way, though, short term, still looking for a little bit of a sell. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell had another really strong day and my alerts were expired, so that was annoying. But they got the breakout here at the trend, had the alert there, but it was not active. Got the breakout here, we're right at the all-time highs through wicks to those levels. If we get the continuation tomorrow, that's going to be a really big buying opportunity for all-time highs on the Russell. Price discovery, everything looks strong there. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. And then the Dow, slightly negative, but still holding this trend here. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish. This is kind of more similar to the rest of the setups where I think this will probably pull back into here a little bit, but the Russell, massive outperformer today. Moving over to the Mag 7, Mag 7 did break out from this kind of consolidation over the last couple days. Highly traded zone, got above that, tested it as support, turned more bullish, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Still got overhead resistance there, 379.22. That was the left shoulder kind of peak here. If we get there, I suspect it'll be a zone of resistance. Still waiting to see if this is kind of a weird right shoulder here. It's bouncing a little bit more aggressively than I would have guessed. I thought maybe this would be the zone of resistance, get a kind of lower right shoulder and then a sell, but for now we're above this, looking at that next level as resistance. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple pulled back to that 9 EMA, 279.44. That could be a zone of support. The momentum did step to bearish. RSI was overbought, so maybe we pull back just a little bit more. The level there, 275.91. If we pull back, test that level, and hold it as support, that would be a nice buying opportunity. And then looking at Microsoft, this is still looking like maybe a higher low here on Microsoft, which would be pretty bullish. That has sold off a lot over the last couple of weeks. Now, if you get a low, higher low setup, this could push back to 506, maybe as high as kind of 520 potentially, and then that next level 538. So watching this one closely here tomorrow. Let's go ahead and put an alert just above here. If this higher lows and gets a confirmation candle up tomorrow, that's going to be pretty bullish. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla breaking through that 450 level. So now 450.22 is your support. It gaps right to that level, opened at 449.94, so pretty much right on top of my level, and immediately went bullish, closed on the high. Everything looks really, really strong there. For Tesla, would like to see this hold that 450 level. As long as that holds, this could push as high as kind of 475, 480, maybe even to that 500 level. And then looking at NVIDIA here, still stuck in the middle of the range, 180 to 184, bouncing off that 144 EMA, 21 EMA is your resistance, 184 area is still resistance. If this rejects from here, you would expect that next zone to break, and then we would head back down to this kind of 165 area. Moving over to Meta and Google here, you can see that massive gap higher on Meta, hit the 200 and rejected from there a little bit. Momentum still bullish though, RSI still bullish. Would like to see it pull back, fill the gap, and then get the go. That would be super bullish, but either way, this should be a bigger continuation towards that 700 level. That would be what I would look for. And then you got this trend here as well. That's going to be a little bit of overhead resistance between that 700 and current price, but either way, everything does look a little bullish. The support area is kind of far away though after that gap higher. And then looking at Google here, basically unchanged over the last 2 weeks, but that 9 EMA has caught up now. That is 316.92 as a zone of support. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, both of these falling here today. Staples down about 0.5%, but still holding this trend support in here. Momentum still a little bearish. RSI right at the SMA. If it holds that level, that's bullish. If it dips below there, that's going to be a little bit more bearish. Potentially, this is still a bottoming pattern in my opinion. Maybe this is a left shoulder, head, right shoulder potentially. potentially. And then we get that true bottoming pattern and bigger continuation. That would be interesting. And then looking at discretionaries here, you can see fell about 1/3%, but still testing that trend area. Found a little bit of a bounce. It is falling after hours. Momentum is flat. Looks like this is likely to sell a little bit more. Moving over to breadth. Breadth did fall a little bit on 20-day, held this support area on 50-day, so really no new information here. This looks a little bit more bearish on 20, so maybe this pulls back a little bit more, but 50-day basically unchanged on the session. Still think we'll get the pullback and the higher low setup based off of what we're seeing on breadth. Moving over to the dollar actually put in a bullish candle here. This is still a pretty consistent downtrend on the short time frame, but on the daily chart, you can see positive on the session. We're hanging in there on the open of the Friday session. Maybe this is done here. You can see the step towards bullish on the momentum here on Friday. That would be nice to see this kind of continue higher over tomorrow and then into next week. That would still give me an opportunity to make money on that position that I have. So overall, not too bad. I think this will go a little bit more to the bull side, hopefully. Moving over to bonds, you can see J&K still hanging in there. It dipped a little bit on the session, but buyers came in, a little bit of volume on the session. If we get the confirmation up tomorrow, that's going to be pretty bullish. That means this was majority buying. We could get the continuation here. That would be a bit of a risk on signal for markets. Would like to see that, especially if it's going to confirm that move that we're seeing on the Russell. That would be interesting. A little bit more bullishness there. And then looking at TLT, you can see the 200 in here. Continues to be support if you're trying to trade bullish. That is the level you need to hold at that 88.41 level, and then looking to get above that 89.16 area. So far, not a great candle, of course, down 0.5%, but the 200 is still intact. Moving over to the VIX, look at that step to bullish on the VIX. We're continuing to fall here, but that momentum starting to signal a potential move like this, right? We got that first step, started to spike up over the next couple days, hesitated briefly, and then got a bigger spike. Is this the start there with that first step? That is what we are going to watch over the next week to 2 weeks. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I did take a short position here on the Qs, a pretty long dated one, 43 days to expiration at 640. If we get above that 624 level that we talked about, I would be out of this position. So wanted to give myself a little bit of cushion. I still think that that zone should hold as resistance. We tagged it today, got a pretty good reaction, quite a bit of volume. Clearly there were some stops in that area. So we already got one stop sweep in that area, went short after that. Went against me just a little bit, but not too bad. But either way, kind of short here, being patient at that level, and then no changes here to that dollar position. Still hoping the dollar will get back above that level. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Meta. Is Meta an opportunity right now? Even after all the selling, is this a good place to maybe buy in and see if Meta can go a little higher? Let me know what you think. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.